أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف حالكم؟ Alhamdulillah, we continue in our last hadith. We spoke about the hadith, what we call the hadith al-wilayah, where we had those three things that we spoke about to attaining the special love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in our next hadith, the topic is somewhat different. So we'll look at that inshallah. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله تجاوز لي عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان وما استكره عليه. Hadith is hadith number 39. Hadith number 39. So the Sahabi Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, indeed Allah has overlooked for me, tajawaza, has overlooked, li, for me, an ummati, has overlooked from my ummah. That li is like an additional thing. You could, the tajawuz happens for my ummah. Tajawaza an ummati li. Can you see that thing? The wording reads tajawaza li an ummati. So that li is almost like He's done it for my sake. Allah, for my sake, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tajawaza an ummati. Allah has overlooked from my ummah. What has Allah overlooked? He has overlooked for my ummah al-khata'a. Khata is a mistake or an error. Nisyan. Nisyan is forgetfulness, and mastukrihu alayhi. Mastukrihu alayhi. This comes from ikrah or kariha yakrahu. And what does kariha yakrahu mean? You know, makruh. Dislike something, right? Kariha means to dislike. On the fourth bab, akraha, it doesn't just mean to make someone dislike. It means to compel them to do something. And istikrah has a similar meaning. When you compel somebody, when you force them to do something. Bab 10, yes. No, yes, it means to compel, to force them, to coerce them to do something. So, this thing moved now, but anyways. So, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that for my sake, what does he mean by for my sake? He's telling you it's a fadl from Allah to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is a bounty from Allah to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that Allah lightened the burden of his ummah. Why? There was a verse that was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that you basically be answerable for everything. Innal basara wal fu'ada kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. You will be responsible for your sight and everything, and even your heart. So that was something very difficult for the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? Those fleeting thoughts, those things that come upon you are things that you can't, it's not like by your own volition. It's a thought that occurs in your mind, but it's not always by your own volition. So it's something that you are, that's overcome you, not by your own volition. So that was difficult for the companions alayhim salatu wassalam. So also, yeah, so that was difficult for them. And then Allah or Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam basically revealed that or said to the companions that how we understand it is like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not take you to task for anything that's not within your own volition. So if you do something, when we say khata, yeah, it doesn't mean you commit a sin, intentionally commit a sin, or intentionally do something wrong, and then become remorseful afterwards. No, there's a consequence to that. For that, you must make istighfar or tawbah. Usually, when this matter is discussed in the books of fiqh, they mention it as somebody who does something nasiyan, jahilan, or mukrahan. When you say jahilan, khata over here is when you do something out of ignorance. You commit a mistake out of ignorance. Right? So there are things in which if you do something out of ignorance, then it will that excuse of ignorance will be considered. Right? That excuse of ignorance will be considered. For example, if somebody makes a subtle error in the salah, like many people don't know the mas'ala of clearing the throat. So if you okay, I don't know, I always also want to mention these things to people when you just become pedantic in your salah. Right? But they say that if you make a sound with your throat in salah, such that you're making that there is a pronouncement of the sound of two letters, then it invalidates your salah. So if you're not forced to that, it's just naturally done, but you're actually doing it maybe so that you can recite nicely or whatever, you shouldn't do it. Because reciting loud is a sunnah part of salah. And making it extra, those extra sounds are not. But anyways, I don't want to go into pedantic. Don't, usually, especially the Shafis get crazy with this stuff. But there's many masail that are subtle masail that a person may do by mistake. So if a person does a thing like that, depending on the nature of the mas'ala, it will be overlooked. Obviously, if somebody drinks alcohol and says, no, I didn't know this was haram, then that is something that will not be accepted. Why? Because that is something what we call ma'loom min ad-din bil-darura. That is something that by necessity it's known from the deen. There are certain matters like this. Like if somebody tells you, no, I didn't know I have to make salah. Like even Christians know we make salah. Not Christians, even the whole world knows we make salah. So, there's certain matters in which ignorance will not be accepted as an excuse. But in other matters, it will. If you're taught incorrectly, it still depends what. It still depends on what matter it is. There's quite a bit of detail that I can go into on this, but I don't want to belabor the point. So, for example, there's matters that's established over and over in the Quran. So we say it's established definitively in the Quran, right? Or it's something that is, let me just leave it at that. It's established definitively in the Quran, and in addition to being established definitively, it's something that everybody knows about. If it's a matter like that, we won't accept it. The person will then have to still make tawbah and all of those things. Otherwise, the person just makes amends going forward. For example, if a person was doing a trade incorrectly, maybe the form of the trade wasn't correct, we might just overlook that. Something they were doing out of ignorance, overlook that. When I say we'll overlook that, I mean Sharia will overlook it. It's essentially Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overlooking it. The next one is nisyan. If you do something out of forgetfulness. Or rather, you don't do something out of forgetfulness. You will not be taken to task for that. Give me an example. Ramadan, you eat by accident. If you eat by, like, out of forgetfulness in Ramadan, you forgot that you were fasting and you ate, it's fine. Your fast is still valid. You don't have to repeat today. But there are exceptions to these rules. So these are principles, but there are exceptions to these rules. For example, if you eat in Salah forgetfully, then your Salah will be broken. And what they say, the scholars say, is because in Salah there's hay'atun mudhakkira. In Salah, you're acutely aware of the fact that you're making Salah for the entire duration of the Salah. Whereas with fasting, it's of a protracted period of time, so it's possible to forget. Other such matters, maybe you had to pay your zakah, but out of sheer forgetfulness, you forgot. You will not be sinful on account of it, but you still obviously have to pay your zakah later. The same with Salah, forgetfulness. So I forgot to perform Salah for the entire while. Maybe I woke up and for some reason I wasn't thinking straight and I just completely forgot about Fajr. And then I saw, hey, the sun is up. Forgot about Fajr. Sheer forgetfulness like that, you won't be sinful for it, but you must still make it up. So the scholars actually say, what you consider is, the fuqaha, they categorize it like this. If the matter is, you can distinguish matters into what is ma'murun bihi and manhiyun anhu. Things that you are commanded to do and things that you are prohibited from. Right? And then in terms of those as well, you can subcategorize them into something where in these itlaf, there is destruction of something or the breaking of something, and when there is not. So if a person does something that is prohibited because they were compelled to do it, or they did it out of forgetfulness or something, then simply they will not be held to account for that. If a person did something or didn't do something that they were commanded to do, then they won't be sinful for not having done the thing, but they must still do the thing afterwards. Right? So in the category of something that is manhi, so you can either leave out something you're commanded to do, or you can do something you're prohibited from doing. If you do something that you are commanded, if you omit something that you are commanded to do, you're not sinful, you must simply make it up later. If you do something you're prohibited from doing, then you have to check. In my doing the thing I was prohibited from, did I destroy something or did I not destroy something? If I destroyed something, then it depends what it is in terms of what I have to do. I won't be considered sinful, but if, for example, it's somebody's property, then I must repay the property. If it's a salah that I broke by eating the salah, then I have to repay the salah. But if it's something like fasting, then you don't have to make up the fasting. If it's something that you did a prohibited thing, but you didn't break anything thereby, right? You must simply just, you don't actually have to do anything there. You're just not sinful for it, right? If it's somebody's thing that you have in your possession, you just give it back to them, but you don't have to, like if you broke something that belonged to another person, you would have to either get them the same thing or give them an equivalent. When I say an equivalent, I give them the equivalent value. Sometimes things are what we call, it's mithli. You can find the equivalent, or sometimes, it's something you can't give somebody the equivalent of. Maybe somebody had a vehicle that only existed one of in the world, for example, or they have something that is a handmade thing that is unique to them, and you now break that thing. You would, the qadi would have to give a value to that thing, and then you'd give it back to them. So That's a general principle that applies to this method. Categorize it. Is it a doing something you're prohibited from, or omitting something that you are commanded with? If you omitted something you were commanded with, you must simply do that thing afterwards when you remember. Or yeah, if you do something that you are prohibited from, you check, did I break something in the process? Did I not break something in the process? If you broke something in the process, in all of these cases, you're not sinful. Right? So where's the tajawuz happening? Because the Rasul says, Inna Allah tajawaz ali. The tajawuz is happening in the sinfulness or not. If it's something that's broken, and it only has to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then most of the time you don't have to do anything about it. Besides, now, if it's something like salah, you have to redo the salah. Where there's a hayatul mudhakkira. If it is somebody else's possession that you broke, you have to repay it, but you're not sinful. If you didn't break anything, then yeah, you're just not sinful. So he says, yeah, that إن الله تجاوز لي عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان وما استكرهوا عليه, and what they are compelled to. So again, what is overlooked? The degree to which they are compelled. The degree to which they are compelled. So I'm going to give you some examples. You tell me if it will be overlooked here or if it will not be overlooked. So somebody comes to you and they tell you, if you don't denounce Islam, I'm going to shoot you. What's overlooked? Your verbal denouncement. Verbal denouncement, right? Because that's the only thing they can compel. Can they compel your heart? No. So that will be overlooked, right? And that's actually one the example that's mentioned in the Quran. That verbal denouncement will be overlooked. Obviously, saying that it's overlooked doesn't mean it's always the better thing to do. It doesn't always mean it's the better thing to do. Okay. I am compelled. Somebody says, if you don't steal that person's car, I'm going to kill you. You've been coerced. Yeah. It will be overlooked. Right? And there's a precedent for that in the Quran. You can do something that's haram for a need in that moment. Overlooked. However, you can't keep the guy's car forever. Right? Obviously, if it's still with you when you're no longer coerced, you have to give it back. Right? Yes. Okay. Fine. It's fine. You can. Yes. If you in die hunger, you're going to die of hunger. Can I take somebody else's property to eat? Yes. The madhab differ in relation to how you treat it. Some will say you take it and you don't have to repay it. And some others will say that you take it and you've taken it as a loan. Despite the fact that you didn't ask for anything like it. It's not like a normal loan. But because of your need, you can take it to preserve your life. You must repay it. Yes, the condition is you must take enough only to suffice your need. Yeah, and they're not lucra. If I can go do a job over there or I can steal something over there and I'm able to do this job, no, then it's not overlooked. That must be a darura. Okay, here's another matter. Somebody tells you, if you don't kill that person, I'm going to kill you. Not overlooked. Not overlooked. Doesn't matter how you compel you or whatever. There's no tafdeel of one life over another. The scholars even say, in terms of sexual activity, you can't claim compulsion over them. But that's a more technical matter. But you can't claim compulsion over there. But the gist of the hadith, look, there's a lot of fiqhi things that pertain to this hadith. But the gist of the hadith is what? Allah doesn't take you to task for what's outside of your own volition. Yes.
And I was coming into the office during COVID because I didn't check it out. That was 9 after. So, and I was made, so I was seen that I was by my English to not play the rings in the car. Use it as much for them. Don't play the rings in the car. Just to say you want to change because it's COVID, they won't come in. And now COVID is finished and they come in and come in. And I hide. What to plan on it. But now this guy, because he was served, and God, he's prison of the. So I don't know, I feel very, they come all the time, and I can't have any more. I don't know what to do. And they don't want to do it like.
This is a question I wouldn't like to answer on camera. No. In a case like that, if you compel, like for example, you lose your livelihood for it, then Allah will overlook it. But like I said, I mean, it's something I would prefer to answer on camera because it's not a one-size-fits-all case. Or method. And the other reason I say that is because this is a matter that ulama have discussed extensively. And so I'm saying it with a lot of background quyud in my mind that I'm not going to go into now. But if it's a real case of dire need, like there's a job that somebody requires that job, they have a need for that thing, and then there is like a matter extraneous to the job itself. It's not part of the actual job. It's not like the job is to do something haram. Right? It's extraneous to the job. And they're compelled in a moment, then it might be something overlooked. And I think it will be something overlooked. But if you can avoid it, avoid it. Yeah. But however, like in relation to matters like that, as a general rule, the best thing is to proactively avoid the situation by telling them, look, this is a matter of non-compromise for you. And most of the time, I think people actually respect it because they know that if you want to fight it legally, you'll win. Especially now, yeah, you'll definitely win. So they'll be very, very careful. Employers will be very careful to impose upon you something like that. Touching between opposite genders, all that stuff. The Western world, we got a real shock of its life with that whole Me Too movement as well. Especially from the side of male, they had a whole list of rules. Never have a meeting with somebody of the opposite gender in a room alone. I was like, oh, okay. That's what we've been saying all along. But yeah, so I mean that need, the categorization of something as a need is a case-by-case thing. And that's why I said I wouldn't like to answer it on camera, but just as a principle, that's a case-by-case thing. Right? The principle of the hadith that we're getting at here is the fact that Allah doesn't take you to task for something that is done outside of your own volition. Right? And what is categorized under that? Something that you do out of ignorance, something that you do out of forgetfulness, something that you do out of being coerced, because to some degree your volition is stripped from you there. There's other things that are categorized under this as well. If you do something, but it comes like under the nasi. If you do something while you're sleeping, if you do all of those things. So there, what falls away? What falls away is the hukm taklifi. Listen again. What falls away is the hukm taklifi. What's a hukm taklifi? There's 5 ahkam taklifi. What are they? Fard, wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. So that falls away. Each of those things means something. What do they mean? What does wajib mean? Okay, so in terms of the technical definition, it means it's something that you must do, right? But added to that definition is, if you do it, you'll be rewarded. If you don't do it, you'll be punished. ما يثاب فاعله ويعاقب تاركه. If you do it, you will be rewarded. If you don't do it, you'll be punished. Mandub, mustahab, sunnah. What's the meaning of it? It's something recommended to do. But in a more technical sense, ما يثاب فاعله. If you do it, you'll be rewarded. ولا يعاقب تاركه. But the one who doesn't do it will not be punished. Can you see all of them connected to reward and punishment? مباح ما لا يثاب فاعله ولا يعاقب تاركه. There's no thawab and iqab. You do it if you want to. Right? Something that's mubah. Makruh. Just like if you don't do it, you get rewarded. And if you do it, you don't get punished. ما يثاب تاركه ولا يعاقب فاعله. The last one, haram, something you must not do. يثاب تاركه. The one who doesn't do it is rewarded. ويعاقب فاعله. And the one who does it is punished. You see, all of them connected to reward and punishment. Those are the 5 ahkam of Islam. That's their definitions. Right? So when we're saying that tajawuz happens here, the consequences of those ahkam fall away. The consequences of those ahkam fall away. The thawab and iqab. Right? That falls away. But what doesn't fall away is the hukm wad'i. The hukm wad'i. Sometimes we call them circumstantial ahkam. Finding appropriate translation for them is not very easy. But these are ahkam that don't apply to the doer of the act. They apply to the existence of the action itself. Right? Did you see all of those 5 that I mentioned? I mentioned fa'iluhu and tarikuhu. Right? It's connected to the doer of the action. The doer or the non-doer of the action. Even in terms of the definition of it, it's the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is connected to the actions of a mukallaf person. That's connected to the actions of a mukallaf person. The focus there is on the person doing the action. But then you get certain ahkam in the Sharia that are not connected to the person doing the action, they are connected to the action itself. Connected to the action itself. If a child steals something from another person, what happens to the child? In terms of the ahkam taklifiyya, nothing happens to the child because the child's not mukallaf. They're not duty bound to the laws. However, is there no consequence for the action? There is consequence for action. Otherwise, everybody would just get children to do the dirty work. Right? No. There's a hukam, there's no hukam taklifi, but there's a hukam wada'i. So what's the hukam wada'i? That action of taking the thing, that action is something that is fasid, it is invalid. Therefore, it must be reversed. So now what happens is, the child must give the thing back. If the child cannot give the thing back, the equivalent must be given back by those responsible for the child. Nobody's sinful. Nobody's going to get punished. Right? But the person must be, their right must be given back. It's only, if nobody knows that the kid did it, then there's nothing. And that applies across the board. So if I do something in my sleep, if I kill somebody in my sleep, I'm just using an extreme example, right? If I kill somebody in my sleep, am I going to go to Jahannam for that? Am I sinful for that? No. Remember why? Because the reward and punishment ahkam fall away. But am I still responsible? Yes. What am I responsible for? We're still going to have to pay the blood money. So there can be no qisas upon me. You can't go to me in the court and say my life must be taken. But the family mustn't be made to lose because of the existence of that action. Now, the blood money must be paid. So the family is not deprived of their, their remuneration for the mere existence of the action. Whilst the person that did the action is not punished because he wasn't duty bound at that moment in time. He's not punished like a punishment in the akhirah or a penalty in the dunya, but there's still consequences to the action. Because somebody has to be responsible. A person was killed, somebody has to be responsible. So that's maybe something that people don't often focus on. Right? Something people maybe don't often focus on. And what is that? There's two sets of ahkam in Islam. Most of us only know fard, haram, and makruh, and all of this. That's one set of ahkam, hukm taklifi. But then there's another set of ahkam wad'iyya, which is kawnu shay, that something is a cause for another thing, or that one thing is a condition for another thing, or that one thing is a preventative for another thing, or that something is valid or invalid. So those are the ahkam wad'iyya. And despite the fact that you may be being forgetful or coerced or anything like that, those ahkam wad'iyya may still apply. Right? Just so that nobody is made to suffer a loss unduly. The ahkam differed. The ahkam differed because the person by their own volition took that, consumed whatever they consumed. So we generally won't lighten a hukm for them. So, excuse me? It is two different actions. So here it depends if it's an action against the person again or against Allah. And I can't remember the exact tafseel of it now, the exact detail to the matter now. So I'm not going to enter it. But I can maybe shed more light to that. Because I know there's some ahkam that if a person does while they're drunk, we won't consider it. We'll consider it as non-existent. And I think it pertains to like nikah and talaq and stuff like that. But I'm not sure right now. So I think I'll go check that and then I'll get back to it. And inshallah. Yeah. Okay, I think that's sufficient in this hadith. Inshallah.